So we're going to kick off. We've got a really nice lot of talk to get through with you this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are. We're going to be talking about virtual learning journeys, engaging with learners at distance, which is a topic that appears to be really, really popular. I think we've got more people on our webinar today than we've ever had, which is exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. And we will be really looking forward to engaging with you and hopefully giving you exactly what it is that you've come to us for. In a minute, Patrick and I will introduce ourselves and get going. I've just got a little bit of housekeeping for you. During the talk today, the webinar today, we will be taking some questions, and we certainly will be at the end if we have some time. Submit your questions in the questions pane and not in chat, and they will be checked, or they will be put over by Lindsay, who's our producer today, to make sure that Patrick and I can see them and try and respond to as many as we can during the session. If not, we will attempt to get back to anybody's questions after the event, so hopefully we'll be able to deal with all of those. In a couple of minutes, we'll be going through the actual agenda and topics that we're going to be covering today. And at that point, if what you think you see is what you want to stay for, then please stay. But we will not be offended if you look at that agenda and go, actually, this isn't what I want to see. That is absolutely fine by us. I'll also be asking you at the end of this session a question, which is, what would you like us to talk about next? And that does seem like a kind of a strange question to be asking before we've even started this time. But please, again, put into questions or chat any ideas of what you want us to cover, so we can make sure that we're talking to you about what you want to hear. And at the end of the session, we will give you a link to an insight, a 10-12 page document that we've written that supports a lot of what we're saying today, and we'll be sending slides out to all of you as well. So if we speed through or seem like we're speeding through slides, don't worry about it. You're going to be getting a deck with all of this in it. So we'll move on very quickly. I'll introduce myself and then hand over to my colleague Patrick. The two of us are going to be your hosts today, covering a topic that we're both really passionate about and excited about, particularly at the moment. My name's Andrew Jolly. I'm Director of Strategic Design at Leo. I've been doing this for many years, as you can see, and I lead the strategic faculty, if you like, in Leo, which is a team of between 15 and 20 consultants and strategists and experts, and we spend all our time designing and delivering solutions that are blended and digital and learning from what we do. My quote, as you can see down there, is my quote for today is, I believe it's what happens in between the events of learning that is most important, and you'll see that coming out, I think, in what we're talking about today. Over to you, Patrick.
Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Thomas. I've been with the organization for about 14 years, and principally I tend to work around the convergence of new technologies, learning technologies, and strategic design. And my quote, and one that I care a lot about, is that we're all natural problem solvers, and so we need to give people adequate challenge to be able to respond to, and do that frequently. That's what's going to engage learners best. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks. So many of you will know that we are, both Patrick and I work for Leo Learning, and we're part of a group of companies called the Learning Technologies Group. The group grows in an exciting way, in the sense that we are continuously have added to our close colleagues, organizations that are all in the service of delivering change, growth, talent management in organizations. And we get to work with some of the very best in the industry in all of their fields. As this set of our sister companies grows, it means I can't go into them all at the beginning of a talk such as this, because it would just take too long. But you'll see a number of products that you will recognize and know, I hope, including Gomo Learning, a globally leader in authoring tools, Instilled, which is a new LXP, I say new in the last 12 or so months, that has come out of LTG, which is a really interesting video social learning experience platform. Our colleagues at Watershed, who we work with very closely in measurement and analytics, and 3 service companies in that on that map there. Preloaded, who are a games-based, serious games organization based in London. Our colleagues at Uclea, who are a governance, risk and compliance specialist team, and Leo. We have been at the heart of this amazing group since it started, and we are in the business of delivering digital learning, digitally enabled learning in all its forms. And we have this phrase, leading your learning revolution, which might be considered punchy, but the most important word in that is your learning revolution. All of our clients are in a different place in terms of where they are in transformation of learning through digital tools. And so our job, certainly in Patrick and my team, is to understand where our clients are and work with them. And we deliver strategy, platforms, content, and all the learning that can be packaged and delivered successfully as a result. We get to work with some of the world's largest global organizations and teams, and so we can bring a lot of the insights that we have to you on these webinars, and we very much like doing that. And today we'll be bringing a few examples of those to you as we talk about the topic. We're going to start with a question. Over to you, Patrick.
Yeah, so wanted to first check in and see sort of what percentage of your learning programs were fully virtual, so previously, where there was no physical face-to-face component to it before this year. And so that we'll start with our first polling question there. If you could put in your selection.
So there we are. Hopefully you can all see the poll there.
Some of you are putting in the questions. You can actually click straight into the quick poll. That will log it.
So we'll wait another 10 seconds for anybody to put in their choices. Let's see what we got.
Okay, so the majority in it from 0 to 25%, so very, very few actually. I'm also noticing there's some comments that are coming in where the polls aren't working, and people are saying, so you know, and it ranges for the people that put the responses in the questions from 0%. Somebody, Dana, put in around 90%. So there's a range there, but it does look like the majority is around is very, very few.
So that's really interesting. So the challenge is really high here for us all, and we're all in this together. We're all suddenly in a place where we're having to deliver our virtual learning, our learning in a fully virtual way. And it's no surprise that we are all joining together in these kind of webinars to learn from each other really, really quickly. So what are we going to be talking about today, Patrick?
I'm gonna give it away. So what I want to do is present to you what we're going to be covering. If you need to drop off, if this isn't going to hit the mark for you, please feel free to drop off. But what we want to be able to talk to you today is that for us, learning journeys are critical. They're a critical part of the design portfolio. Blended learning works. There is good science behind it. I want to be able to give you some the science and some strategy behind that so that you can convince your leaders that it is making a difference. We are in a moment of time where we're replacing physical for virtual, so we'll give you some tips about and some strategies about how to do that successfully. And then we want to be able to show you where we've tested these strategies sort of in earnest in case studies and show those to you and see if you have any questions on those.
So specifically at the end there, you'll see during the next 50 minutes with us that we've delivered some really big blended learning journeys over time. And so we've got some pointers as to how to engage learners over time, particularly when we're all under such pressure as learners to go and do other things and to be distracted. How do we keep people in with us over time? Because learning journeys, as Patrick has said, are the way to deliver profound packages. We've been talking about events, webinars and virtual classrooms and virtual workshops over the last few weeks and in our last webinar with you. And we're kind of moving beyond that now because we're beginning to crack it. As Patrick said, we're fast learners. We now know what a good webinar looks like, what a good workshop should be like. And if we're getting that right, what does it now mean for our learning? It means that we are in a position to take the blends, the journeys that we were delivering, i.e. learning that happens over time, and switch out the things that we were doing face-to-face effectively and put in the new virtual formats. And that gives us some real positives, but it gives us some real challenges as well, because we can, as I was saying, we can lose people over time. So we have to really think about how we're engaging them, as well as what the best components are to switch out. And we're going to be talking about that shortly. So
Andrew, I want to jump in ever so quickly. There's a question here from Nick about how to do blended learning when there's virtually no budget whatsoever. What we're going to talk about next is around blended learning and how to make that work. We're going to show you some modes on how you do that. So this is a case of just replacing for the things that are low cost or no cost. But we want to give you the strategy up front, and then you can make the decision on how to do the swaps. Sorry, Andrew.
Perfect. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about blended learning, just as a kind of foundation for some of the chat we're going to have in a minute. When we all started in this digital learning world that we're in, we really just had a couple of learning modes to work with. Maybe we had read, ask, test, quiz kind of tests. We might have had watch if we had video back in the early days. Video was tricky to deliver to large audiences with low bandwidth. Now we are in a whole different world. We're in a place where we can use a whole different range of learning modes, ranging from games, gamification, social media, where we can solve problems together, where we can discuss things, where we can share things, where we can include normally a face-to-face, and a whole lot of different learning modes, and we have a whole lot of different channels. And so we've been working in a place for the last few years where we can build journeys through these different components that are doing things in different ways for our audiences. And Leo, we have a way of thinking about how we join those different components up. to work in a learning journey, a blended learning journey. And that's what we call Align, Deliver, Sustain, which many of you will be familiar with, or will have something very similar that you use. In summary, Align is about preparing the learners for effective digital engagement. It could be about motivation, it could be about personalization and diagnostics. It could be about bringing people up to the right knowledge level to take part effectively in a learning component, or joining a community, for instance. Actual core bit of what we do in the journey is delivery, and there may be loads of different ways we do that. It could be very factual acquisition of knowledge. It could be soft skills that we need to deliver in a different way using video or deeply interactive content. We want to be able to practice as learners. We want to be able to apply our knowledge in some form, and that may involve coaching. It may be involve going to an event, a live event, traditionally, working together. It may involve assessment and so on. And then the third stage, which is arguably the most important of all, is what we call sustain. So this is about making sure that the learners are in a position to apply their learning and keep it develop it as a new behavior, keep it at front of mind, and keep that learnt behavior going into the future as business as usual. And that can be delivered in so many ways as well. So that's how we think of a blended learning journey. And just to give you a quick example, here at Leo, we've been working over the years with the UK Civil Service, which is the organisation of over 400,000 people that work in government in this country. And this slide, which even I can't read all of the text on, you'll be glad to hear, is the kind of map of all the different courses that we were developing in a consortium for the Civil Service learning team. So there are a whole load of different courses, and each line there represents a different set of topics. And what we were delivering was a very digitally enabled experience, but it was blended. So there was a lot of stuff that people were doing at their desks and using tablets and mobiles. But at the end of the day, we were designing the journeys associated with those programs, topics, as within our Align, Deliver, Sustain model. So you'll be getting this slide in the deck that we send out, but you can see Align starts with comms and diagnostics, discussions with your line manager and setting context. Delivery is both acquisition and practice, test, and discussion. And then sustain is about transferring into normal behaviors, and reminders and nudges and so on. And so we applied this broad model to all of those different courses and topics, and it's been hugely successful and a model for our learning. But as you can see, there are things there that rely very much on face-to-face engagement. And so what happens when we move into a situation as we're in now, where you have face-to-face is just not possible? All of that civil service program there, you can see, is absolutely about changing behaviors in practice. There is some technical training in there, but to a greater extent, it's about behavior change. So over to you, Patrick.
It is surprising how a lot of people feel that doing a behavior change program is sort of the apex, the most complicated of design programs, and it isn't. And in fact, by employing good research models and strategies, you can be ambitious. You can actually make a proven impact in modifying behaviors within the workplace. So that's why we think it's important. We think it's important because we think that this is absolutely a defensible approach in digital learning design. And we think it's important for you to think bigger about the ambition you have in your learning programs. But before we go there, I'd like to go to another poll question if we can. For those of you that are having difficulty with the poll questions, give it a try when it comes up. But if you're having difficulty, just go ahead and put it in the questions pane, and I'll try to do a quick sort of survey of those. But the question that we wanted to start with, which I think is a good one to think about, a good sort of temperature check of where you are in terms of sort of perception of leadership. And so how confident is your leadership that learning can change workplace behavior? Really keen to know how people feel about this.
Let's see how you feel about this. So the options are not at all, hopeful that our leadership, believe and are confident that learning can change behavior, very positive, I'm very confident. Really interesting, because if we'd asked this question years, even up to a couple of years ago, I think we would have got a very different answer to what we're going to get now.
And for those of you that are struggling to put them in, I can see that you're putting things in the questions, which is great. I'm getting a preview of what the summary is going to be, which is pretty nice.
Right, let's see what we got.
So the majority are landing in at positive and hopeful is where your leadership are. And that is the same in the question responses as well. I think that's hilarious, Hedda, where you say maybe too confident. You know, there's Amy here, I support engineers who are not comfortable with talking about behavior change, and that's not, so, you know, that's not uncommon either, and you have to match your audience with what you're trying to intend. But it does look like most are hopeful and very, very positive leadership in terms of behavior change. That's great.
I mean, it is good. We got nearly 70% of the audience positive and very, but you know, we've still got 35%, you know, not on that side of the fence. And in the world that we're in now, we're trying to persuade our leadership to continue and to invest in behavior-based learning programs. Patrick.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw a bunch of bullet points at you right now. Here's a consolidation of some strategy and models that are pulled from research, and I think it's important to put them up there. This isn't this isn't everything that's come out, but you know, these are the ones that we tend to use quite a bit here at Leo. So these get a lot of airtime here at Leo. You know, linking knowledge to existing memories and emotions, that's fundamental, but you can do that using stories as well. You know, we love challenge. We love making people sort of react and even become slightly uncomfortable in a particular challenge where they may not have the confidence, and so you're introducing a bit of risk to a program. You know, reflection is good, and it can be very explicit through a journal. Reflection can also be done. You can enable somebody to reflect upon their own performance as it relates to their peers. You don't have to be so hard as to say, how are you performing against your peers? What you can do is start to show tell stories and show models of how peers are performing in this new way of being, and people can draw their own conclusions. And of course, manager support is critical in getting the learning transferred into the workplace. So I want to show you then how that looks in actuality.
Sure. those bullets, amongst others, is what we're trying to do here, but now we're trying to do in a virtual world.
So we had the very good fortune of working with this organization, Suncorp. They're in Australia, New Zealand. Incredibly innovative for a bank, and their challenge was that the design challenge that they said to us was, look, we want to do a leadership change program. We are changing as an organization everything. Your challenge, though, is you've got to build this within a social learning platform. That actually turned out to be a challenge that was brilliant. It worked really well with this. So what you've got here is a shot of a topic page within a topic page, then are linked to a bunch of resources that sit underneath it, where you will have curated articles and peer videos and reflections. What we are working to, and what you would recognize in any leadership program, is the fact that these people are really time poor. They are emotionally stretched, and we had to remind the team that these people are adults. They want to succeed. They want to improve. Let's give them the tools. Let's let the research show, the research shows, give people the tools to be able to implement effectively, because they will want to do a good job. And that's what this whole program is about. It's about providing a set of resources and tools to where they can practice safely within their teams or one-to-one. We spent a lot of time in demonstrating why this matters, what good it will do to them and to their team, and showing how this gets modeled through their peers. And so the program really is a summary of stories from peers and successes and failures, providing those relevant resources for practice, allowing for that reflection and that motivation to continue. This wasn't a mandated program, so the motivation to continue to go through was the fact that their peers were going through it, was the fact that they were seeing comments being posted on, and so people could go at their own pace, and they did at a pretty good clip.
And that was a program that didn't use a lot of rich media and a lot of what you might call traditional e-learning, but delivered very much, largely at arm's length and at distance, a really engaging behavior change program, and extremely successfully. So we now know that blended learning journeys work, and we hopefully have shown you a project where you can begin to change behaviors. And it's a topic we talk about all the time, because clearly learning is about behavior change, and we're forever aiming high to make sure that we can tackle any subject digitally and deliver performance shift and organizational change in that context. But back to where we are today, we're in a place where we need to be replacing the physical components of, say, the civil service program or the Suncorp program with virtual ones. So what does that mean for us? I think we're going to move on quickly, Patrick. We'll take another question in a minute, because we've got stuff that we want to get through. And I think we were going to ask you how you're doing. But I think I kind of know the answer to that, and I think we're all doing our best in a time of change and fast learning. I want to go on quickly to think about what is changing in the situation we're in right now. Largely, we know the key components that were face-to-face that we used to put into blended learning journeys, which might have been presentations, going to conferences or group conferences or large group sessions and small events and things like that, delivering workshops, whether those are small group creative workshops or teams working together, and connecting with each other individually as well, managers, peers, individuals. And what does that mean now? Well, it means, in essence, we've got a number of tools to play with. We have webinars like this. We have virtual classrooms that a lot of us are doing all the time, virtual workshops, group sessions, and one-to-one online meetings. But Patrick and I wanted to reflect briefly on what that means to us. In actuality, what are we losing, and what are we having to deal with when we think about what we're losing? Patrick, do you have any thoughts?
So the thing that is probably most, which is the saddest, is that what you are losing is the nonverbal communication, the sense of space that you have when you're in a room with people, and you know that you can shrug your shoulders and people see it. You can show vulnerability. You can make a joke, and you can see how it lands with people within a room. You can't do that online. So that the sad thing is that you've lost a lot of very intimate nonverbal communication, and you've got to be able to then create that space in a digital world. That for me is sort of the biggest change.
And I think also we've lost the loose time together. We used to, working in an office or engaging in different meetings, be able to have conversations that were not fully directed or action-led, and learn from each other hugely, just in a project, on a project by project basis, just by discussing and having support from each other in a natural, loose and ad hoc way. And all of that now has to be sort of fully facilitated in order to make sure we have that back in our armory, in our blended learning journeys. And it has to be kind of over-organized, which is really difficult and doesn't make it feel natural, at least not yet. So broadly, we're having to force the kind of emotional engagements that we used to have in a slightly unnatural way in order to make them happen for us in our designs. We wanted to talk briefly about those main components and what we've learned and what we are learning at the moment. I'm going to start with presentations, what we used to deliver. In terms of broad single point out to lots of people type experiences. So these are what we would call webinars, exactly what we're on now. We've got more than 200 of you. Largely it's Patrick and I. Hopefully we're taking some questions and we're using surveys and we're engaging you. But we believe that more than 60 minutes and people would start to drift off, which is why we're trying to really pack it in here. But people worry about whether we're engaging enough. There's a lot of talk at the moment about whether lurkers, i.e. those of you who even right now are kind of probably doing something else, but maybe listening in with half an ear to what we're saying, are a problem. We don't have a problem with that at all. In fact, we like people who are just listening in. We also love those of you that are chatting and taking part and committing to questions and so on and so on. It takes all sorts to make these kind of things work. We say use the tools that you have, and there's a lot of talk at the moment about different tools, whether you're using Zoom or Adobe Connect or GoToMeeting or any of the others. It's a topic that we have covered elsewhere, in fact, in our last webinar a month ago to some extent. And if anybody wants more details on that, just get in touch with us and we can find the specific sections of content to send out. But look at what you have to play with. Look at using surveys, questions, live chat, and so on. But in a webinar situation, you can't engage too deeply with that many people and keep everybody moving, keep the topic moving fast. We try to do everything in 5-minute chunks and drop in a question or drop in a change. in fact, working with two people really makes it easier both for the presenters and I believe the learners, though you can comment on that anytime you like. I always try and design presentations, as Patrick does, in thirds, beginning, middle, end. You know, we're right in the middle chunky bit of what we're talking about today. In another 5 to 10 minutes, we'll move into kind of wrapping the whole thing up so that we can make sure that as we hit the top of the hour, we've kind of brought you on a kind of set the scene, giving you some practical stuff in the middle, and then wrapped it up at the end. But it is all about energy and passion as well, and bringing stories. After all, we're all kind of doing this. It's like a little TV show. It's like a little radio show. It's a TED Talk in miniature. And we need to learn how each of us fast, and we're all learning right now, how to get that kind of passion and energy across the way people in TED Talks do. And there's some great collateral about how to do that. Next, we're on to.
Yeah, we have a couple of good questions, if I can. So there was a really good question from Catherine who asked about what the difference between webinars and podcasts are, and when you would use those. And from our point of view, the podcast is something which is the podcast is a very intimate medium, and you're in somebody's head, and it needs to be considered. You have to think about the soundscape that you're creating, and you have to be able to create. You have to create a value at every episode, and there has to be a level of entertainment, a level of information that keeps people coming back to it. You have to assume that people are not going to have pen and paper when they're listening to a podcast, and that's kind of the big difference from our point of view on webcasts versus webinars versus podcasts. Andrew, one for you from Nick, who asked, so we're happy with lurkers, and in an organizational setting, then how do you ensure that that they're going to sort of stay engaged, and how they're going to how do you know that they're going to transfer what's being taught back in the workplace?
Yeah, well, interestingly, if you're delivering something out to a very large number of people or a large group in a webinar context, then it's very much kind of a broadcast experience, you know, center out. And so it is really hard to ensure that there's some takeout. I think, you know, going back to what a good blended learning design is that there's probably almost certainly a way of creating something that happens after that. So if we want to make sure people have listened hard and have used something within a webinar, it's very like what Patrick's just about to talk about virtual classrooms and workshops. You need to tell people before that this is really important and motivate them, and that there's going to be something happening afterwards that they're going to have to do with this information and apply it as part of this sort of journey, and not allow them to just drift off or think that they don't need to engage because it's not important. The point is you're doing it because it's important as part of your blended journey. So make sure people know before a webinar that why they're doing it, what's coming out of it, and what the action's going to be afterwards. And hopefully they will engage.
Yeah. So for us, some design pointers around virtual classes or virtual workshops, the kind of sweet spots and around that 6 to 10 attendees, because then you can actually get in and facilitate and work with that group. No more than 90 minutes, and give them a break where you can. You want to create the cohort, even if it's a single. But if this is going to go on, you want to create that space and that unity, and that can be done in a really soft way. It could just be a bit of intro of people introducing themselves and talking about where they're from, or you know, allowing people to just talk about sort of the day that they've had before going in straight into it. That helps to build trust and confidence. It does require hard facilitation, and this is the point about when you're facilitating in front of a class, you can approach somebody, you can sort of use your arms to gather in and motion to people to participate. People understand in a room when they can speak and when they can't. When there's a delay, people aren't just going to pile in with ideas in a virtual setting. You have to call them out and give them a moment to speak. It's a much more rigid form of facilitation that you need. You need your energy. You need to bring your energy and passion. And think about play. Think about your camera as a way to play in a virtual setting. Those would be our sort of big tips.
We've got a question, Patrick, from Anyana, if that's how it's pronounced. There's a philosophy that duration shouldn't be a hard stop as long as the sessions are engaging. And what are your thoughts? Really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal, but everybody, have you noticed that you've got back-to-back Skype, Zoom meetings, or Google Hangouts now the entire day? Like everything is now 30 minutes. Don't know if you've noticed that, but that's everybody now has got meeting packed in. So I don't think that there's a luxury of having it open and expecting the participants to have that kind of open-ended calendar either. It'd be nice if you could. Wouldn't
it? It'd be really good. Maybe we could sort of build in flexibility for these things.
Maybe that's a learning.
Yeah. So the other key area where we used to clearly benefit from face-to-face and physical interaction was supporting each other, sharing, and so on. And obviously, we've been using social media and social learning strategies in blended learning for years now, but it becomes even more poignant and more important right now. So I would say that the way we think about it is split into what you might call formal, which might be things like action learning sets, cohorts that are going through some learning together, that we are actually in a scaffolded sense saying, right, you 8 people now need to do this activity collectively, collaborate, report back, share, etc. And we use that a lot in defining learning journeys to make sure people are learning together. We do something that you might call, or we're experimenting with something you might call campfire sessions right now, which are sort of small, informal gatherings, but organized, where learners can talk about their experiences and how they're doing, share challenges, discuss things, maybe with 4, 6, 8 people maximum. And then, of course, we have large informal spaces like communities. We often get a question at this point about moderation and whether one needs to be wary of moderating large communities. The answer is, depending on your sector, it can be very, very important to make sure you have moderation in place. Certainly in anywhere to do with compliance, legal, financial, etc., you would want to be very careful, and our clients are. However, in small groups, small sets of learners, you get a lot of self-moderation happening, which is really, really nice. And in an action learning group, people will actually encourage each other to take part in the right way, because they need each other to complete certain tasks. And it is all about building trust and making sure that the groups and the people, new learners, are using these tools together and supported.
The other big one that people are working with is, where there is something structured as a physical only, and then like a one-to-one sessions, like coaching, like leader catch-ups, or where there's a direct intervention where you're checking performance. And how do you do that? What's the expectation when you go to virtual with that sort of thing? And so, you can't assume that you're going to have a one-to-one that's going to be that's going to be a natural flow. You actually need to have an agenda on what you want to cover. And you need to diarize these things. Whereas before you could swing by somebody's desk and do a check-in, or you could tack on a question about how did that training go that you were on when you were already in another meeting. That can't happen now in this current setting. So as a manager, as a leader, you're going to want to make space for those kinds of check-ins and be ready to be coached. So that basically means, you know, make sure that you are being empathetic and demonstrably so. Because you're in a virtual world, it's not about just nodding the head and looking like you're listening. You actually have to follow through with the right questions and the personal questions that are meaningful and matter to the person that you're talking to. So it's about demonstrating real empathy and actioning and recording everything. So you might want to be following up with the actions and the things that you discussed, or even your reflections on the conversation that you had.
We've had a really nice question from David saying, we mentioned group sizes being restricted to 8 people. Why that number? Interestingly, and this is just purely something that we've realized in the last few weeks, I think, from using these kind of tools more and more and more, is that if you want people to be in video talking to each other and to try and get at least some level of fidelity of kind of conversation or what it would be like in a room with a group of people, if you have 6 people, you can probably see the other 5 relatively clearly on a screen. You might be able to push it to 8, but beyond that, everybody's just looking like little squares on a page. And you're going to lose all of that level of fidelity that you might get through video. You're also going to have a really hard time engaging 8 people in a fully kind of collective and collaborative conversation of some sort. So a virtual classroom, you know, 6, 8, 10, if you're going to run a workshop, 8, a collaborative workshop. Above that, it begins to become kind of webinar type experience.
It's really hard to understand. It's really hard to also pick up everybody's thoughts and manage and really manage each one of the participants and what they've said previously in the session when you've got more than 8 or 10. As a facilitator, your head is going to burst. I wanted to just bring up, this cookie dough before it's even gone in the oven. This is Tough Cookie. This is an organization, this is brand new. We're working on it right now. I thought it was a good case study to bring up because this is an organization whose model, so what they do is mental resilience training, and it's perfectly timed in these times, but they deliver workshops. Their models are really effective workshops where they create a space in a workshop for employees to be given both the science and the models around mental resilience techniques and to practice those. And so this is an organization that has had to completely change their model on how they deliver. What is probably what I find remarkable, but probably shouldn't be surprising in any way, is that they intuitively understand what it means to be generous of spirit to the people, the participants in the room. So creating a safe space, and they intuitively know that that's important, and they have captured that in a digital format. So they are taking all of the knowledge acquisition stuff, all of the science, all of the case, all of the history stuff that supports what they do. They move that online as a self-paced and learner-led, and then they use these synchronous workshops, facilitated workshop sessions, the virtual sessions, where the facilitator is really bringing their expertise, telling their stories, and allowing people to share and sense make. It's then bookmarked, it's sort of bookended after the session, it's recorded, and then it's sort of bookended because then you would go and do some reflections and share some of the practice that you're doing. So this is Katie's living room. I have a massive, big heart over her name on my desk here, because she is a designer that she thinks about breaking out design and in a very visual format. She's broken out the whole content by types of interactions, and she's spread them across her living room. Now, God love Katie. I mean, you have to have credit to her flatmate who has to look at that in their living room. But so this is something that is sort of being built, and they're flying and they're running this now as we go. So I thought it was a good case in saying how you can change sort of on the fly without losing the essence of what you do.
Now we have one more question for you, and then we're going to talk about strategies for keeping your learners engaged over a period of time, which is really important. So to you, Pat.
Yeah, we're going to go back to this poll. Again, if you're having difficulty, drop them in the question pane there. But of the distance online programs that you start, what's the average completion rate? And so you've got your range there, sort of on average. And this is all virtual. So we've got the range from 25, if it's around that, 25, 50, 75, or 90 plus.
This is really interesting, because we're asking our audience here on this webinar, who are digital distance learning specialists, how many, well, we're assuming everybody does distance learning themselves. Hopefully we all do, and experience what it is that we're creating for our lovely learners. So the question is, how many of the programs that you start, what's your average completion rate?
The questions are pointing to a pretty high number.
Yeah.
Shall we see?
It's really important, because as soon as we're creating these blended learning programs, and we're requiring sometimes people to stick with us over a number of weeks. We're challenging them to do a lot of work outside their busy work program, and so there's every other reason for them to be doing something else. So how are we going to keep them in? If we look at the results now, let's see what we've got.
Straight down the middle.
Straight down the middle. So 30% of you only complete half of the courses you're on. Roughly 30% complete
So
3/4. 30%. Yeah, it's massive dropout rate. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. I'm glad to say that's all way above your average kind of MOOC type dropout rate, but that's kind of different scenario, obviously. So I'm just going to
take heart, because there is a wide range of folks on this call, designers from organizations large and small. So take heart that kind of dropout rate is currently happening. So if that is happening in your organization, you're not alone, but we can solve it. We need to solve it.
Yeah. Before I give you some pointers for how you do solve it in the last few minutes, I just want to make sure that all of you have put into chat all questions, what you'd love us to talk about next month. I have some ideas already from a whole lot of stuff that's come through, but I wanted to make sure that you had been thinking about that. So here's a program I'm going to show you where we got 98.5 completion rate over an 18-month digital program that was very largely arm's length distance learning. For the UK National Health Service on the subject of leadership. How did we do that? Or rather, what did we learn at the end of it? Because this was a huge program delivered with a portal at its heart and a number of different components and blended components, some face-to-face as well, of course, but probably only about 20-something% was face-to-face. So a lot of digital work that had to be done over time. There were 8 different semesters, if you like, of 10 to 13 weeks. And some of those 13-week periods, we were just leaving learners in an entirely digital arm's length distance relationship. Admittedly, we had live sessions and virtual classrooms and tutors as well, but we still had the challenge of keeping them engaged and happy and with us over a really long period of time. I've got 4 pointers for you on that. The first one is context and motivation. Treat every touch point and moment in your learner journey as if you have to sell it and sell the next one that's coming, and say why you need to do it and why it's important in the journey. So if that means, making sure that every small step in a topic or a module, there's a paragraph of this is what this is how long it's going to take you, this is why it's important, and after you've done this, you're going to have to go and do this and this and this. And it's part of just making it really clear to the learners what it is they're experiencing. And make sure you have plenty of context. People coming into the program know what they're going to experience, know what the entire form of the program is going to take, and what the journey is. So they always know where they are, and they always understand what's coming next. Think about action always. So you may have passive components. You may have video to watch or a webinar that you can be a lurker on. But you think about always designing in and creating what you want learners to do next, or with that information. How are you going to get them to apply it? How are you going to get them to show you or themselves they now know what that piece of learning means to them, and that they're going to apply? So plenty of action-based content was in this large program. We've talked about collaboration and social learning, and in this program we had open forums, communities, one-to-one tutor groups, and action learning sets of 8 people, which is a sort of traditional number, actually, referencing the question earlier of people in an action learning set. And they would engage sometimes on their own, just in their set, and sometimes in a tutor-led context. But collaboration and co-working was really important. Think about variety and pace. If you have a number of different modes of learning you're delivering, and you're using e-learning and scenarios and virtual classrooms, mix them up. Don't give somebody 14 PDFs to read in a row. Make sure that you're creating a nice kind of level of pace. Don't challenge people with something to do and leave them for too long. On this program, if you left people for more than two weeks, they pretty much forgot what the whole program was about. So keep stuff coming for them to engage with over time. Variety is really important, and use different modes of things like video. You can have drama, you could possibly have interviews, and don't be afraid to just use resources and workbooks, as you saw in the Suncorp example. And finally, think about emotion and vision. Emotion is about kind of storytelling and how you might use videos. And in this program, we were taking a risk when we put a poem into the learning that was really relevant, but we had somebody write back a poem back into the community, which is amazing. So it really did do a lot to drive the way people responded. So there's a lot packaged in there, and if you're interested, I can run another session on that. Just stick it in the question, stick it in chat, and I can run a whole session on the kind of strategies around kind of engagement and comms around pieces as well. So we've almost run out of time. I just want to say that a colleague of ours is Jeff Bloom is doing a piece of work that hopefully will come out to you all shortly on how you feel learning is going to change at the moment and what it's going to be like in the short to medium term. If you would like to take part, I ask you, please do, and complete a very short survey that we'll be putting into the information coming out to you. A 3-minute survey, literally will take just that, on how you're doing and what you think the changes will be. You can download the latest insight here. which supports a lot of what Patrick and I have been talking about, with even more information as well behind it. And if you go to this link now, which you'll be getting shortly from Lindsay, then you can register and download that insight before everyone else. Otherwise, you'll get it on Friday, along with the recording of this, a link to the recording of this webinar session, and some other sort of follow-up information. So please give us feedback on how this webinar felt for you, because we want to learn from that and we want to take that. Patrick, do you have any final thoughts?
I do, and from the responses that we're getting, I very much appreciate that everybody's pitching in and with suggestions for things that we can cover. And it's a lot around technologies, it's a lot around engagement, and we will definitely put that together. And the next number of webinars will base on your feedback here. So thank you very much. I think it's a moment in time for me. Last thought is we've got a moment of time right now where we can experiment and we can try, and there's a lot of grace being offered when it doesn't work. So I would say for the designers out there, use that as an opportunity to try and fail. That's okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think now's the time. Try it out. And my point I would make in terms of design and strategy is always think to yourself, would I do this? Would I do this if this was a course that I was on? I just want to reiterate what Patrick has said about all the questions. We've had some amazing questions today, and we were trying to cover a lot, so we haven't got to them. But we run panel webinars, and what I think we're going to do is take and create a panel webinar next, based entirely from the questions that you've given us today, to make sure we're answering them. So you'll get an invite for that. I hope those of you that pitched in questions can join that webinar, which will be in a few weeks' time, maybe a month's time, and get answers to the questions in a much more kind of interactive way. Thank you very much from Patrick, from I. Contact us if you have any further questions, and you'll get your follow-up. I want to thank Lindsay, our producer today, and Tilly and Hannah for everything they've done organising this. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for coming today, sticking with us, and for all of your engagement and all of your brilliant questions as well. So thanks very much, everyone, and see you very soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.